How's it going, my evil residents? Happy 10th anniversary to The Evil Within. To celebrate, I'm going to be making a trilogy of videos this month celebrating Halloween with a spooky game and the 10th anniversary of this wonderful game. First off, in this video, by ranking all of the bosses. This is going to be mostly a subjective ranking, though if I feel something is not designed as well as something else, I will bring it up, but ultimately it's going to come down to personal opinion of which ones I think are best. For full transparency, I haven't beaten this game on Akumu mode. I've beaten this game on all the other difficulties, but don't take any stock in this list for how these bosses behave or play on Akumu mode. If you're looking for that, I would look elsewhere. There's many achievement and trophy videos on this game that can help you out a lot more. Anyway, I won't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into the video. In last place, we have Sadist 2. Now, I kind of want to start off here. I don't think any of the bosses in this game are bad. So this one being in last place doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but generally I'm not a fan of reused bosses unless you like really remix them in some way. This one doesn't really do that. Both Sadist boss fights just are surprising and lock you in a somewhat small area to fight them. The first one, not as much, but it's more of like an intro boss to get you used to fighting bosses in this game. This one I don't think works as well as many of the other bosses in this game because, yeah, it's like, oh crap, I have to fight a sadist right now, and I maybe used all my ammo, but you already know how to fight the sadist, and the arena isn't significantly different. He doesn't have significantly more health or anything like that, so I don't think it remixes the boss enough to keep it fresh. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I have to fight this guy again, that's cool. So, while it's not a bad boss, none of the bosses in this game necessarily are bad. I do think it is by far the least interesting boss. Next up on the list, in number 14, we have the second Keeper boss fight, which is in that, like, freezer room with all of the like, bodies hanging from the middle of it with the saw blades that come around on the ground. This one, I like significantly more than the last one. All the bosses from here on are pretty much all great. None of the bosses in this game are really, like, a huge miss. But this one, it remixes a previous boss fight well, and the bodies in the middle make it a huge pain. But the thing that I like about it with like the cramped arena is also the most annoying thing about it. Sometimes the physics of like the hanging bodies in the middle just do not work right. And if you're not prepared for the saw blade guys, if you come into this without any healing items at all, you're probably just going to get absolutely decimated. It's a really punishing boss fight. A lot of these boss fights are pretty punishing, but this one, if you don't have heals, honestly, you're done. For like second phase, if you used your healing item in the first phase, you're absolutely cooked. I like this boss fight, but it is a just very random spike in difficulty on a mission that overall is not that hard, which I respect, but it's still frustrating with having to juggle trying to shoot the actual keeper without one of the bodies blocking it because they're swinging, with keeping track of him with all the bodies in there, and just the saw blades and how cramped it is in general. It's a huge pain. If you're not ready for it, it's going to absolutely decimate you. I'm going to say that for a lot of these bosses, but this is the first one that's like that. So it goes in 14th place, mostly because, honestly, it's a reused boss, and I very much value unique boss fights over just reusing a boss fight. So that's mostly why it goes to the bottom. It is a good boss, but it can be very frustrating. So yeah, it goes to number 14. In 13th place, we have Amalgam Alpha. This boss fight, once you understand how it works, once you get used to it, is very fun and very engaging. However, this boss, in the like few times I've played this game, is the only boss that I've ever had absolutely just break on me and just stop working. Like, I'll show in the gameplay, the AI just completely broke and he was just standing there and I was like, what the heck? Okay, cool, I guess. And the game does prep you for fighting this boss. It gives you some extra stuff beforehand, which is nice, and there's a lot of stuff in the map that can help you. But if you don't know how to damage the boss, you gotta shoot the eyes, or you gotta shoot the head in the front, but you really gotta shoot the eyes. If you don't shoot the like tentacle eyes while he's looking for you, you're gonna burn through all of your ammo. And then while he's doing the chapter 2 like sucky energy thing, there's an eye in there and it's really hard to see and that's what you gotta shoot. It's honestly, this is I think, the most punishing boss in the game as far as the learning curve goes. The game gives you next to no hints about how to damage him when he's in that like glowy mode, and then it's a one-hit kill. You cannot outrun him. There is no chance you will outrun him. So if you're not prepared, you don't come in with just some good like stunning items, it's an uphill battle for sure. And I think it's the most unfair boss fight in the whole game if you're not ready for it. So that's kind of why I ranked it at 13. It's just the most unfair boss fight. I cannot imagine how difficult this boss fight would be on Akumu. Oh my goodness. If anyone's played this game on Akumu, let me know how this boss fight is, because holy crap, I can't imagine. Next up, in 12th place, we have Zen and Noon. These guys are cool. The main reason they go so low is because they almost feel like regular enemies, and they're not that challenging, especially if you have stun items. You can go for most of the boss fights in this game, but this one, they usually stay close together. So you can just stun both of them at once and absolutely nuke them, and their designs aren't that neat. Most of the interesting stuff about them is in notes and documents in the map. It's not even like anything from them specifically. They don't have super intimidating designs. They are super fun to fight. Like, it's a cool like pre-fight for the next boss, but oh my goodness. These guys are just a little underbaked. If they had like a little more to do, if there was a bit more of their lore that wasn't just in files, I think they'd be a lot better, but as is, they just end up at number 12. In 11th place, we have Sentinel. This is the boss right after Zen and Noon, and oh my god. This is the boss fight that is going to roadblock you in this game. If you're not used to the mechanics yet, if you're having a rough time, if you're low on items, this boss is gonna whoop your ass. If you're playing this on hard difficulty, this is the one that's gonna decide if you can beat the rest of the game. This, in my opinion, this and one other boss fight is where the game really peaks in difficulty, and it goes down a little bit. But once you really hit this point, the game is just full on difficult. And it's not a huge ramp up because you just had another boss fight before it, but it's at the end of a really long level, and you're just tired by the end of that level, and you gotta fight this giant dog, and it's like, oh my god. And you're probably low on items. It's a well-designed boss. It's just really hard, and with where it's placed in the game, it's rough. It is rough. It just feels like another slap in the face after like a hard mission, and it's like, oh my goodness. But yeah, Sentinel is a good boss, a well-designed boss. It's just so hard that it is unfun at times to fight this boss, unless you're incredibly good at this game. So that's why I put it down at number 11. In 10th place, cracking the top 10, we have Heresy. This boss gets a whole level dedicated to itself. Kind of a short level. It's basically just a boss fight level, which is fine. And it's probably the most dramatic boss in the game besides the last one, as far as like scale goes for the boss. It's insane. Like, most of the other bosses are pretty small scale, pretty like contained to one room. This one, driving through the whole freaking city, you're fighting off guys, you're just shooting this guy. It's pretty crazy, and it's kind of a huge jump in action for the game. Before this, the game is very much focused on the creep factor. This part, I think, is really where the game just puts it up into action mode, which I'm honestly fine with. I'm mainly a Resident Evil channel, so, I mean, I like Resident Evil. Resident Evil does that all the time. I'm fine with it here, too. The main reason I don't like this boss is because it has the least interesting mechanics of any boss in the game. Now, with the scope and the style of it, it's really cool, and it's a really, really fun boss. Ultimately, you just shoot at it while standing in a rectangle, and there's not much more to it. Like, that's it. That's the whole boss. And while that's fine, I think the rest of the bosses in this game just have good mechanics or have such good, like, world building or good design that I can't place this guy any higher just due to how simple he is. Yeah, he's great fun. He's not super hard, but yeah, the other bosses in this game are just incredible. So he goes in 10th place. In 9th place, we have the Red Mist, or the Barn Fight, not to be confused with the Resident Evil 7 Barn Fight, both of which RA Pain on the hardest difficulty. But yeah, Red Mist is hard. The amount of screen shake, if you're not ready for the boss, because it feels like kind of a lore dump area, so you're like, oh, I can relax. I don't have to worry about supplies. This is a lore dump area. No, fuck you. This is a boss fight, and it's a hard boss fight, and it's gonna make sure that your vision is obscured, and it's a pain to fight. This boss is hard. I don't think it's as hard as Sentinel, but this is another one that's gonna have you like on edge. How hard it is. It's probably going to roadblock you in some capacity. The main thing that makes this boss hard is the fact that it spawns while you're doing the fight that you have to deal with. Because enemies in this game could sneak up on you really easily, and it could be rough. It could be rough for sure if you're not prepared, if you're not like on top of things looking around, and it can be hard to keep track of. So it's a hard boss, and just with how much fire and stuff and some of the screen shake in this boss, it can be difficult, but it is doable and it is fun, and it's a cool lore moment because you get to learn a lot about another boss that you have fought and the main boss of the game, which is cool. And it's cool doing that in boss fight form, but it is really freaking hard, and sometimes it could just be not fun if you're not ready for it. So it goes in 9th place. In 8th place, we have the first Sadist fight. I think this is honestly a great way to start off the game. It's something familiar, but also very punishing if you're not engaging with the 2 new weapons the game just gave you. It really encourages you to use the things that you just got. It encourages you to stun him with the crossbow, do your damage with your shotgun, or do the sneak attack if you crafted the flash bolts. It's so good. Such a well-designed boss fight, and it is genuinely nerve-wracking your first time through. Like, you see the guy, when is he going to break out? When is he going to break out? You can hear him in most of the area, just like trying to struggle to get out of the chains, and he finally breaks out, and it's like, oh god. And you'll probably die to this guy a couple times your first playthrough. Totally expected. I did too. Totally normal. But once you get used to him on repeat playthroughs, he's really fun to fight because you can just absolutely cheese him. And since it's the first time you fight him, it feels more fun and helps you get used to the game. And if you're a veteran player, he's just a cool, like, oh, it's this guy. Hello. Been a while. So he's just fun. He's not really difficult unless it's like your first time playing, and even then, he's not super duper hard. He's the first boss fight. So I think he's just a good check for if the players are learning the mechanics for new players, and he's fun to cheese if you're a veteran player. In 7th place, we have the second Lara boss fight, which is the big spider lady, if you're not super familiar with all the names in this game. This boss fight, I think, lives in the shadow of how scary the first Lara encounter is, because you kind of learn her tricks. It doesn't have too many new surprises here for you. The main reason that this is hard is because you have to do an objective while fighting her, whereas the first one, you can just focus on fighting her. It's a lot easier. Well, not necessarily easier, but it's a lot more focused. And with the point in the game it is, you probably don't have the equipment to like fight her and like hold her off as much as you do while doing an objective for this part of the game. So it's a really good mix-up of the mechanic. It completely changes the environment. The other one is a very looped environment. You can just loop her around like it's COD Zombies or something like that. But in this one, you cannot do that. There's a couple spots where you can, but it's much more difficult. It's much more difficult, and I swear Lara jukes you out in this game. Like, I'll be waiting, and she'll just go back and forth a little bit. I don't know if it's the AI being a little broken or if she's just trying to juke me out, but it's kind of annoying, and it sets you on edge a little bit. Another fun fact about this, you can just do the objective and you don't have to kill her, but you definitely can, and you get a lot of green gel for it, which is really cool. And I like that in bosses where it's like, you don't have to kill this horribly horrific boss, but if you do, you get rewarded for it. It's something that Resident Evil 3, the original, did really well, that I really like, and I like that it's an aspect of this game as well. It's such a cool mechanic that's kind of underused by games, just like, you don't kill the boss, and you don't know if they'll come back or not. And on your first playthrough, you probably won't kill her. That's probably going to be something you do on New Game Plus, which I think adds to it. I think that's really cool, and it makes the boss fight more unique. But again, it is a repeat of a boss fight with those cool mechanics I just mentioned. I do think the other boss fight is better. We'll get to that later, trust me. But yeah, Lara 2 is just, it's a good boss. It's a good boss. It goes at 7. In 6th place, we have the Traumas. These guys Honestly, they horrify me more than any other boss in this game, and they're so unexpected. They don't get any like big bombastic entrance or anything. They just kind of show up and fuck you up. And that's what's most scary about them. They're here for business. They're here to absolutely decimate you, and they're scary. I think they're the creepiest boss in the game above Laura. I know most people are like, Laura's so scary. The traumas are scary. If you haven't looked at them, they're creepy as hell. Yeah, these guys are very oppressive if you're low on ammo, or if you're not good about keeping your movement and managing your stamina. If you're good with those, you'll probably be fine because they're not overly hard, and it's a lot like the Lara 2 boss fight I just mentioned, where you don't have to kill all of them. You can kind of run past them, and they become regular enemies later in like a maze section. But that section is so easy to skip that I just didn't even put it on this list. It's like barely a boss. But these guys are just really cool, and I really like this section of when you're trying to turn on the generators and get the fuses and stuff like that. So such a good area, but just the bosses above this are just all so good. I don't even have cons for these bosses anymore. So if I rank something below another thing, it's literally just because I like the other thing more. All the bosses from here on up are pretty much perfect. So yeah, traumas go at 6. Next up in 5th place is the Keeper duo that you fight right at the end after that huge holdout section. You fight them, they show up, and you're probably expecting 1. You see the Keeper heads around, and then 2 show up, you're like, oh god, what am I gonna do? And they're fun. And once you know the cheese, it's insanely fun to cheese them. But when you don't, oh my god, is this boss fight difficult. How small the arena is, how fast these guys can be. Oh my god, it's so hard. I love it though. It's such a great check of like, yeah, the final boss is pretty easy, but we're not gonna let you go that easy. You gotta prove that you're good at the game now before you fight the final boss. And I think that is it's such a perfect fuck you from this game that just constantly does its best to fuck you over in a fun way for the most part. I just think it takes a boss you fought already and that you're familiar with, and literally just by having there be 2, it changes the entire way that you fight them. Unless you know the cheese. But if you know, you know. But aside from that, it's such a simple but smart way to mix up this boss that I really think just it works so well, and it shouldn't. Like, in my mind, I was like, oh, I have to fight 2 of these, this is gonna suck, but no, it's incredibly fun, and by this point in the game, you have enough equipment to just take them down, and they're a lot less intimidating. You don't have any of those stupid saw blades that are in Keeper 2, so I just think these guys are really fun to fight. In 4th place, we have the final boss, Amalgam. This boss, is it hard? No. Is it cool as fuck? Oh, yes, it is. This boss is insane. Dare I say, this boss in this game is more epic than the final boss fights in any Resident Evil game. I said it. This boss is so epic. It feels so climactic and so cool. It's a little ridiculous. It goes a little too far into the how is he alive kind of category, but it's just so much pure spectacle and satisfaction of like, you've been fighting this guy's nightmares for the entire game. He has done nothing but absolutely crush you this whole game, and it's a victory lap. It's like, you got here, just beat the boss, have fun. Game lets off on the gas for the difficulty and just lets you take him out. It still challenges you and mixes up what you're probably expecting. Like, oh, I can just shoot him with a rocket launcher, he's dead. Nope, you gotta aim. You gotta aim the rocket launcher. And I think that is my favorite thing that this boss does. I know it's a simple, small thing, but just having you aim the rocket launcher and you have to land your shots, and if you run out of ammo, you just have to watch him approach you and just wait to die. It's incredible. It's so good, and it's brutal if you miss those shots and you just can't do damage to kill him. Like, oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, this boss fight is just so epic. I can't stress that enough, and I'm just gonna be repeating myself about how epic this boss fight is, and that the freaking turret on the Jeep, and you're just flying around. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, this boss fight's just epic. Not much more to say. It's not mechanic heavy at all. Pure spectacle. Pure awesome. Pure satisfying narrative closure. So good. 10 out of 10 boss. Now we move to the top 3 that are also 10 out of 10s. In third place, we have the Quell boss fight, which is the guy that goes invisible. I love this boss fight. This might be my favorite boss fight in the game, depending on when you ask. I think the top two are better designed and have more scare factor, but Quell is just so freaking well designed. He's so cool, and it really builds on the invisible enemy aspect of the game that I just love it. I love it. It's a great boss. I don't have much to say about it. He's just so good. He's just good, and that is all. In second place, we have the first keeper fight. I'm going to keep this short because I've talked about the keepers so much in this game, but this one feels like a marathon, trying to keep them away, trying to keep them off your back while you're trying to do all the valves, and you don't know really how long the boss fight is, and you got this toxic timer on you. It's so stressful, and it's so good, and it's so well designed, and like I said, I don't want to ramble about this too much because I've talked about the keepers so much. I've talked about them literally twice. One of them, I talked about two at once. So I've talked about the keepers themselves a lot, but this arena is just so good. It's such a good arena, and it's so terrifying. And this is another boss that you don't actually have to fight. You can maybe like kill him once, but as long as you just keep stunning him, honestly, you're gold. And I think it's terrifying. And it really adds to when he comes back, you have to fight him. And it's like, oh no, especially if you didn't kill him the first time, just makes that second keeper boss all the more terrifying and like, oh god, I have to do this now. So yeah, keeper's at number 2. He's iconic. His design is iconic. Look at him. He's got a safe for a head. The Payday Gang would decimate this guy. In first place, you know, I had to do it. I had to do it. It's the first Lara boss fight. This boss fight, your weapons won't do anything. Weapons don't do anything. It's you, some matches, and some flaming holes. That's all you got. It really puts you on the back foot. It takes away the game mechanics in a way that doesn't feel like it's tying your hands and like you can't do anything. And I think that is so smart that the game is able to do that, because other games that take away gameplay mechanics from you for boss fights, it can feel like, okay, this sucks. I put all my stuff into this and now I can't even use it. But it really just, especially in a game like this where it's just so oppressive, it just really adds to the fear factor of the boss. Like, oh, this boss could one-tap me, and all I have are some matches, and I can flip some levers. That's all I can do. And once you master the boss, it is the most satisfying thing in the entire world. I'm not joking. Like, if you haven't played this game and you're watching this for some reason, this boss fight is gonna be like one of the most satisfying boss fights you'll ever complete. I'm not even kidding. It's so good. It's so satisfying, and I just love it. It's so good. I know I kept the top 3 short, but like, I can only talk about stuff I like so much. It's easy to complain, and all the boss fights in this game are so good. And I've already talked about Lara and like how she works and stuff. So it's a good boss. It's a good boss. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, drop a like. If you disliked it, feel free to dislike it, but let me know why you disliked it in the comments so I can make my videos as good as possible. We have channel memberships. This video was a channel member requested video from my $10 tier, but obviously don't feel pressured to do the $10 tier. But if you'd like to request a video, that's the way to do it. But you can also join at 99 cents USD per month. We also have a Discord if you would like to chat with me or other residents, and I do have 2 more Evil Within videos coming out this month, so subscribe if you want to keep an eye out for those. Thank you to all my channel members for being members of the channel, but special shout out to my 2 malevolent residents, Belladonna and King of Horror. Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, stay evil, my residents.